because it's about that, because it's not only, Bitcoin is a technology, it's a protocol, but the probability that Bitcoin becomes, I don't know, mainstream, or like many people think it should be, it's not it's not a matter of the technology. That is a matter of politics and geopolitics, because the protocol is working quite well, to be honest. 15 years old, so it's quite enough, like a teenager. But so in terms of politics, it's out of our hands, I think. So we need to stay resilient, keep strong like an anvil, keep doing small things like this. That I think this has been one of the best conference that I have been, to be honest. And it just came from nothing. I don't know, just so step by step. I think we're getting there in a matter of 10 years, 25 years. I think that we are already there, We are already there. So that's it.
Okay, go forward, 25 years. What does it look like?
Yeah, let me share something. It was something that when I was learning, reading Mastering Bitcoin, that is my favorite book from Andreas Antonopoulos in general. So I realized that maybe the future of Bitcoin it's gonna be like the underlying protocol for a better money, but we are not being using Bitcoin directly. So maybe we're using like kinda a new form of fiat, but backed by Bitcoin. So and also it's gonna be like the protocol for
So
creating.
it wouldn't be fiat then?
Yeah, I don't believe fiat is gonna disappear anytime soon.
But I'm saying that if we have some currency backed by Bitcoin,
Yeah.
it will be backed by some. It won't be just backed by hey, trust me, and
Yeah.
yeah.
It will be like something much better than we have right now. So because at the core of the Bitcoin protocol is the protocol offer like hard rules, and also to upgrade and scale the protocol is not quite easy, because it's the feature of being decentralized, because we don't have a central point or an authority to decide what is going to be implemented next, or what is the best solution. It's an adocracy, there is no central point. But in that way, I think in the future it's maybe it's gonna be the underlying protocol for a better money, or for other trust technologies, because Bitcoin is a technology of trust.
Can I maybe ask a question that somebody might want to take this one? In terms of the game theory and geopolitics, what do you think? I mean, it's super hard to guess it right now, but we've got a dynamic situation. Everything evolves, right? So countries will there'll be a lot of elections, administrations will change, and some more jurisdictions are likely to embrace Bitcoin. Maybe it's going to be Argentina, or even making it a free to trade that, maybe without KYC, who knows. Maybe there'll be different Suriname, yeah, could be, might as well. So chances are that there will be another country, at least one, that will treat Bitcoin this way. And I think that this country, that the sooner a country adopts Bitcoin or embraces it and reorganizes its operations around Bitcoin, around mining, around its natural resources, then it becomes, on the way to prosperity. It kind of puts itself on track to secure the future of its population, right?
All right, so I have a take on your question. Perhaps the answer is a bit long. So 4 billion years ago, what I think it's important is for the world to remain like a barrier. To be differences between countries, because the centralists, the people behind the central banks, or the EU or whatever, it's like a force that wants to dominate the world, right? They want to take control, direct everybody's lives, and it's like I would say it's like a communist force or whatever, right? But the reason why they haven't accomplished their goals is because on the other side there's another force pulling the other way of people trying to be self-sovereign, right? Or people trying to have freedom and fighting for freedom, right? And taking out regulations. So that's why we live in the middle. We are neither totally sovereign or totally controlled, right? So as long as that remains, which is something that has been happening for thousands of years, we'll see countries, adopting Bitcoin. We'll see politicians that have some savings in Bitcoin, right? So, for example, in Argentina, there might be corrupt politicians that have some savings in Bitcoin, right? They don't disclose it, and they bought it with cash. But then Bitcoin does a 10x, and now their Bitcoin holdings are like 50 or 60, 70% of all their holdings, right? And now they are, perhaps I should protect Bitcoin, right? Or perhaps I should defend it. I won't attack myself, right? So yeah, it's a super interesting, game theory playing out. So I think that there will be jurisdictions that will embrace it, and those will win out in the end. They will get the benefit of all the appreciation, because we're still so early. We're still under less than 1% world adoption in the currency or money market. It's nothing, right? So Bitcoin still needs to go, 50x, 100x more in purchasing power, and like many say, you could get other kinds of markets, like real estate market, bond market, gold market, right?
I have a question for all of you. So we're talking about the tension between this homogenizing blob of globalization where everything is the same, which has never been more, which has never had as efficient tools as it does right now with technology, where we see every high street starting to look the same, all houses, every architecture looking the same. And we're pitting there's this tension against the people who do fight for individuality, for freedom, for self-sovereignty. What happens if Bitcoin is actually the single greatest force for homogenizing everything everywhere? Because if all of our societies are based on Bitcoin, how do we keep the individuality?
So I think I have a couple of thoughts on that. I think it'll actually do the opposite. So I think instead of homogenizing everything, I think if you grant people individual freedom, they will behave like individuals, and they will go and pursue the things that interest them, and maybe we'll see this disparity of desire, of people valuing different things. So it's interesting, because one thing I learn about Bitcoiners is they're all extremely different. Most Bitcoiners I meet, they have like a common thread of things that they all tend to talk about, believe in, but they're so disparate. I've met surfers, I've met guys, who love eating fast food. It's not everyone's on a carnivore diet, despite what it looks like on Twitter. So actually, I think it releases you to pursue your own culture and your own desires and your own end goal. And I think if you give everybody that opportunity, they probably aren't all going to end up in the same homogenous place. It's hard to say, but that's my thought.
Yeah, it's, it introduces return to quality. Bitcoin is Venus, right? So again, we appreciate proof of work. We appreciate that somebody has done something unique, something beautiful. We appreciate the art, I'm glad that this is happening because, if you go back home, if you look around, there's so many things that has, made in China on it. That basically it just shows you that we are completely dependent on this supply chain of things being produced thousands of miles away, shipped, around the world so that we can have our little, IKEA table that looks exactly the same as, 50 other ones where we can have, a perfectly beautiful wooden unique table, right?
That's it.
So yeah, it will not cost £5, but maybe if you buy a table for your place, you're ready to spend more than £5. So in this sense, I think that the world won't be homogeneous. We will have our likes or dislikes, and 25 years from now, it's crazy. Like think of that. A little girl over there, she'll be 26.
Wow.
And this, that draws a picture, she'll be an adult woman entering, walking the streets of Edinburgh or whatever, the city. And yeah, who of you guys has seen the new Chat GPT 4.0 or 4.0, whatever? This stuff is already crazy. It's beyond our, boldest imagination. And if you recall 2.5 years ago, we wouldn't have these conversations about AI at all. So what will be the world like 25 years from now? How will jobs be, how will the kids from the traditional education system, I'll come back to that again, be prepared to, to become part of a society that is ambitious, that wants to work, that wants to compete, and wants to be creative and produce stuff that people will use. I think coming back to beautiful furniture, beautiful art in buildings, that has to happen. We're not going to be building Sagradas Familias anymore, but we've got a blueprint of doing great things, and we can do that in better than housing that we can see today. Whenever I drive through UK and I see some real estate of identical houses with literally that much space between them, I feel like Jesus. I wouldn't want to live over there if you pay me to. So in this sense, things need to change, and I guess we're getting to the point of coming to the to making a circle to the point where we start appreciating those beautiful things, beautiful places, beautiful architecture, beautiful pieces of art, pieces of furniture. And those will retain value, and we will be living our lives around those things. So it's a matter, sometimes it will be a matter of taste, and everybody has different tastes. Yeah. But we will be able to recognize good design. Those things will stay.
Because you brought up woodwork, right? It kind of triggered a couple of thoughts in my mind, right? So at one point, I'd accumulated enough Bitcoin where it had given me back my time. Right? Because I was out of the fiat rat race where you have to spend all of your time trying to desperately accumulate money that's evaporating just to feed yourself. By having a hard money that you could accumulate wealth, you start to free up your time, which is actually the most finite resource you'll ever get. I can't speak for everyone else, but what happened to me during this was, I did the woodworking thing, right? Because I didn't want to buy IKEA furniture. And it might not have been economically viable for me to spend 14 weeks building a coffee table, right? It's not a commercial endeavor, but I did it for pleasure. And there was a reward that wasn't just money, it was an expression of myself. So I'll end up with a completely unique table, and people might comment on it. I did other weird things, like I got really into horticulture because I thought I'm sick of buying fiat food, I'm going to grow my own food. So I was learning about the pH of soil and all this sort of stuff. Now, you know, not everyone wants to be Charlie Dimmock, right? So, you know, not everyone, when they get their time back, because Bitcoin grants them this, is going to want to make a coffee table or grow some potatoes. They'll be interested in some other weird thing. So I think actually, yeah, it's going to be the opposite of creating this homogenous thing where we all do the same thing. We only do that now because of this extreme race to the bottom that we've created, right? You know, you talk about these houses, right? Well, why are they homogenous and why are they all the same? Well, because it's cheap. And because when money loses value so quickly, if I'm a housing developer, I've got to get these houses up and sold really fast if I want to make a return on my money. Because if it takes me 10 years to build the house, all of a sudden, you know, if I took on credit to go and build these properties, if I don't get a return quick enough, I'm going to find myself offside. So it creates this speed and this level of consumption. We don't build things for beauty or art or taste. So maybe on a hard money standard.
Or even longevity.
Or longevity, right? So, you know, people used to build things knowing that it wouldn't be completed before they died. You can't even comprehend something like that now. So who knows what the outcome will be, but I'm excited to see like what all these weird, different human beings do when you just give them their time back and they're not a slave to just trying to make it round the Monopoly board and collect another 200 quid just to make it round the board again. You know, you do some other stuff. Maybe you just spend time with your family and have a nice time. Imagine that.
I want to add something. I think Bitcoin is that social tool that helps us to create a better society, and in that terms of it helps us to have harmony within the diversity, because everyone is included in Bitcoin by design. So even the people that are, even the no coiners, they are included because there is no a prerequisite to access to the protocol or to access to a coin. They just need to set up a wallet, 2 keys, and get some Bitcoin. So yeah, I really think that Bitcoin is help us to embrace diversity and to empower that diversity, but within harmony, like an orchestra. You know, there are many instruments, different instruments, but at the end they reach that point. There is a sweet melody. I think Bitcoin can do that in the future.
And no Bitcoiners ever agree with each other, right? So it's definitely not.
No, it was. Even if we talk about how the protocol works, it's not they reach consensus because it's easy. No, they reach consensus because every miner is trying to cheat each other. Yeah, it's a reality. But at some point, they reach consensus. Yeah.
So I have a few thoughts about what you were talking about, the world of when she's 26, and you mentioned AI as well, and that we cannot predict the world. So I can say that, for example, that world is going to be extremely hyper-deflationary, or the transition from here to there for the Bitcoiners, we're going to experience a hyper-deflation. Also, Bitcoin could be a peacemaker between the AI and the humans. Because let's say these are like science fiction tales, right? Let's say that one day we do have like an AGI, like a general intelligence that has somewhat a consciousness or whatever. Or we have not reached that, and you have your own AI in your computer, and he has his own AI in your computer, and you send your AI to work. Go get me money, right?
Deploy your AI.
Yeah, you deploy your AI, right? And there will be people with more hashing power, with more computing power. So this AI will realize, what's the money I want to use? Like, should I use fiat? And can I go to Citibank or Santander and open a bank account? No. As an AI, I can't. But I can use Bitcoin, right? and I will be indistinguishable in the blockchain. So then the AI will realize, okay, 19.5 million of those bitcoins are in the hands of humans. Okay, so I need to get those bitcoins, right? And let's suppose that AI doesn't crack SHA-256 or anything like this. Okay, the next option for the AI is, okay, I'm going to provide services and products to the humans, what they want, in exchange for some money, right? So the AI will decide to serve us. Instead of killing us, it will serve us, right? What do you guys think? I mean, and also, well, I don't know if somebody mentioned deflation, or it was just me. Okay, so that future world is super deflationary. A Bitcoin economy would be deflationary. So you were talking about houses, and that the person that builds the house has to sell it quick, not in 10 years because of the interest payments. In a deflationary world, you would also have like an incentive to sell your stock quickly, not in 10 years. Because let's say that the world grows at 3% per year on the economy, whatever, we will have like a 3% deflation each year. So, yeah, I mean, if you build a business today to make sats and have a surplus, a profit, you may not have that profit in 5 or 10 years because the price of the house should have gone down, right? So you're still like incentivized to let's do this quick. It's always like a race against time.
So I'm going to jump in with one thought. We said 25 years. It sounds like such a long time frame, but at the same time when were the ETFs approved? Was it January? So we had the ETFs approved in January, and so 4 months ago, the craze started. China jumps on the wagon with Hong Kong. We got Australia, South Korea, lined up. You got the biggest asset managers in the world. So BlackRock, Fidelity, just pouring in cash in massive amounts. There's one company, Vanguard, doesn't want to do that. Few months, like 2-3 months later, the CEO of Vanguard is being let go and replaced by a guy from BlackRock. And guess what they're gonna do? Like, they probably reflect on their decisions not to include the Bitcoin ETFs. Because this is an obvious flight to quality, right? So I'm thinking that those 25 years might be actually really might develop very, very quickly. Suddenly, then gradually, then suddenly. We've been only living in the Bitcoin ETF reality for 4 months now. So it's super early in terms of institutional adoption, and they already get it. They know they want to get their hands on the Bitcoin. So you've got pension funds pouring in, you've got insurance institutions pouring in, and this is now coming from in the US even before the elections. So I think that the pace. We may be kind of fantasizing and trying to reach out far to 25 years from now, but maybe 2.5 years from now, we'll be living in a different reality.
Yeah, it's like we don't know how much Bitcoinization will take. I mean, it could be super suddenly, like you say. It could be a rush to the exits and everything's changed forever. Or it could be more gradually. I mean, the reason I choose this approach of talking about 2050 is just in case the suddenly doesn't happen, right? For example, it's the story of all of us, I guess, that it takes us years to change and adapt, or Bitcoin teaches you, right, or changes you. So yeah, we are like, I don't know. Some are 10 years old in Bitcoin and you're still learning, right? There are still layers of the rabbit hole to peel. Yeah.
I was just going to sort of maybe take us back to your original question about what the world might look like in 25 years. I'm not going to really comment on where I think Bitcoin is necessarily, but let's assume that it continues to be successful. The thing that excites me the most actually is how it might change human behavior in general. I think you're touching on it as well, is it definitely does change you. You know, when your money evaporates, it drives this short-term behavior, and you see it everywhere you go. I've seen it in that woodworking course that I joined. I mean, it's just crazy, the nihilism, the hedonism. But having, you know, used Bitcoin for 10 years, it's definitely had a dramatic impact on me in terms of, you know, I think in decades now. So, you know, when I did lose the Bitcoin, all I'm thinking about is, okay, by 2028, where am I going to be? You know, by 2032, where am I going to be? And, you know, it's not just monetary either. It's, you know, you might think a lot more about your health, right? You know, there's less of this sort of nihilistic, like, oh, sod it, I'll just live for today. And I think fiat money, what that's done to a lot of people is it's taken a lot of people who might have been productive and might have actually contributed to, you know, the human experience and the world in general, might have been completely taken out of the game because of all these crazy incentives. You know, like these kids at college, they're all taking a lot of drugs every weekend. Now, some of them will fall through the cracks because of that. You can already see it happening. In a world where those people felt like there was a way to, you know, improve their life and grow their wealth, I hope it leads to the death of consumerism, basically, because look, you know, let's say I'm a 17-year-old guy, I probably, whether I understand the machinations of what's going on or not, I probably already inherently understand it's very unlikely I'll ever own a house. It's laughable to think that on the average UK salary you could own a house and raise a family. So whether they understand why that is or not, I don't think matters, but they're not trying to raise a family and they're not trying to buy a house. They've already given up before they've started. It's removed everybody's motivation. And it means that, you know, maybe these people only become 50% of the potential of what they could become. So you know, Bitcoin kind of makes me bullish on people. I think, you know, you see a lot of selfishness and people acting in self-interest. We've kind of lost, certainly in the UK, I mean, community, I don't know what you guys think, community really doesn't exist that much. How many of your neighbors do you know? Right? How many times do you go to like community fairs or like meetups and you know, barbecues like in Argentina?
Every Saturday.
Well, every Saturday you want, because you're a Bitcoiner, right? And this is what happens. So, you know, with this, if I'm thinking like I already can't win this game because the odds are so stacked against me, then it kind of makes total rational sense that I just say, hey man, should we just go to the club on Friday and just tear it up, right? With sound money, I might say, do you know what, instead of ordering a Deliveroo McDonald's to my house and spending £20 on that, I could probably make a better quality, more nutritious burger at home and save £15, and now I have a vehicle to put that £15 away and get even more burgers in the future. So changing those incentives, I think, is so incredibly powerful. I don't think any of us probably grasp just how far that could propel all of us sort of into the future. So my hope is that it changes humans and human behavior, you know.
Following up on that, one of the things that I have observed is that in the more developed global currency West, the excitement for Bitcoin is purely for its number go up attributes, whereas the potential that I see unlocking in other parts of the world is far more the human potential and hope, and I wonder whether we'll see Bitcoin's going to do well here because the guys who value money go, and come on, everybody values number go up. Number go up is nice, but when it's the only thing about Bitcoin that is valued, I think I wonder what your thoughts are. Are we going to see a real shift, in a geopolitical shift in our sort of bloated consumerist society not being able to pivot to Bitcoin fast enough, and the rest of the world, we're currently struggling, not as affluent, actually overtaking us.
Yeah, maybe to comment on that is like, well, I think Bitcoin is this is happening already happening, but it's like it's gonna be playing a more important role in the energy industry, like in terms with the, I think maybe the organizations, government, states are gonna see that potential of the Bitcoin mining, like how can we balance the grid and how can use those stranded energy, all those facilities that are already installed. I think that will be, maybe that will be happening in the west side of the country. I will say in the well-developed countries, you know, because energy, we are living in this era that sustainable energy is a thing, you know. Maybe too much, but I think Bitcoin will play a role in that, mining Bitcoin, maybe for the states or organization, yeah.
I want to follow up on what Rick was saying. So, I believe that humanity, throughout its history, has had like some big breakthroughs of consciousness, let's say. So let's imagine what humans were like 7,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago, right? Well, most likely we were killing each other, raping, lying, stealing, right? We still do it today, but somebody who got enlightened and said, or he thinks he connected with God and taught the people, hey, no, we shouldn't do this, right? There are these rules or these morals, and let's follow it and we'll do better, right? And some humans decided to follow that human and they self-restricted their behavior, right? So they stopped killing or whatever. And well, it became the religions, right? The Judaism, one of the oldest, then the Buddhism, Jesus had some teachings, right? And so now I feel like, or believe, or think, that Bitcoiners, we also have a really daunting task, because you're trying to change the culture of the world. I mean, you're trying to download a whole set of knowledge on people that don't know a lot of stuff, right? They're not interested yet in where money comes from, why it's losing value, etc. So, I mean, I've been doing evangelism for a few years, doing talks and conferences and the sort. This tour in particular has been more focused on already Bitcoiners that know something about Bitcoin, right? So my call to action here to everybody is, okay, start trying to orange peel or teach the people that resonate closest to Bitcoin and to you, right? Because we have also an opportunity. It's not like we need to teach the bankers or the politicians about Bitcoin first, right? If they get it last, then it's good, right? I mean, they will lose a lot of money. But if you have, a family, if you have, I want the world to be more libertarian, so let's help the libertarians get Bitcoin first, right? And we will be more powerful in the future. It takes decades. I mean, just as in Argentina, the terrorists that were shooting people in the 70s are now the people that are deputies and senators and all of that. We will also have, a few decades from now, our moment. And I believe that Bitcoin world in the future, a Bitcoin world, this is not a bad thing for me, takes us back to what the world was like before fiat, which was the gold standard era, right? So we might go back to some kind of like monarchies. And let me tell you why. Let's suppose the case of Bukele, right? Bukele says he's accumulating 1 Bitcoin per day, right? So he makes a huge stash of Bitcoin and all, thousands of Bitcoin. And when he needs to leave office, his enemy comes into power, right? What is Bukele going to do with those Bitcoin? Say, hey, here's a stash worth billions or trillions of dollars. Here, have it, right? And what is the opponent gonna do? Like, steal it, right? Oh, sorry, oops. I know. Got a bad voting accident. Or also in the 2015, perhaps Michael Saylor or whoever holds 200,000 Bitcoin is going to be the world's richest person on like even more power and more money than many countries, right? Which some of them will be broke. So I see a future in which Michael Saylor approaches any country, small country, and tells them, okay, give me jurisdiction over this, or he influences the politics, he pays for defense.
He becomes the IMF.
He becomes the king, right? And so in that scenario, I think it's good to be friends with him. I mean, if you're friends with Michael Saylor, he will invite you to his country, right? And I also see a world in which the deflation, the appreciation of his Bitcoin is enough to pay to almost all of the expenses of running the country. I mean, he could have so much money that it's like, okay, I invite you, come. I only tax you 5%, right? So yeah, I know. There's a question over there.
I just wanted to touch on a couple of points in the geopolitics. I think exactly what you just said, but I think it's useful to look at geopolitics in blocks of 100 years and no smaller. If you look at a map of Europe and you go back 100 years at a time, you see how many countries there were, how many countries now don't exist, and that has not just suddenly stopped. We've got a pretty cushy view of the world from the last 70 years of relative peace, that these things are constant, but they're not. It's been changing for thousands of years, and things like monarchies may well re-emerge for better or for worse.
It's interesting because when on Madeira there was a conversation like super surreal, but Bitcoin OGs, those who hold significant stack and have kids, discussed the idea of coming back to kind of arranged marriages, where basically you want to make sure that you pass your legacy to someone who will partner with someone who has similar values, and maybe you want to combine your stack together and become even richer family in the future. So interesting.
I just have 2 questions if everyone's interested in commenting. Well, one, the lead on the geopolitics. I'm not sure if you're familiar with soft war, but if you think Bitcoin could be used not just as kind of a monetary, but maybe even as the human antlers that looks at how we can solve disputes, not kinetically, but like through Bitcoin and cyberspace? I'm convinced this will be the case. Like Bitcoin will become, a power projection tool. And I also think that 25 years it's a long enough time that Bitcoin will have its own battles and wars, like block size war we had one, and I think there's going to be more of those. And the real question is like how who do we listen to? Do we just all look over to Adam Back and say what do we do now, or do we think that maybe Blockstream has too much control? So those will be the interesting dilemmas. But I don't know, Rick, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think in terms of war, right, Bitcoin does a lot to sort of curtail the state's ability to pay for war, right? Because, they would have to raise tax to pay for war, and eventually everyone gets sick
I
of...
meant like block size wars, like we have
Oh.
with concussions and you know more forks effectively. You know?
Right, okay, so sorry?
We can talk about war.
Yeah.
We're in geopolitics, yes.
So I'm talking about war because, you know, necessarily Bitcoin removes the government's ability to fund unlimited war, right? Which is the problem that we have today. And they do that, obviously, because there's some powerful vested interests in the arms manufacturing sector, right, that constantly want to push for this constant war. And, you know, look, when we had a gold standard, war would eventually come to an end because one of the sides would have more power, more wealth, more resources than the other, and eventually they would get the better of the other side, right? That doesn't really happen anymore. And eventually, you know, your society will get sick of funding war through taxes because they'll think, hang on, I'm paying a lot of money, I'm getting poorer, and all my friends are coming home in boxes. You know, they lose you might whip up your population into wanting to go to war to start with, but it won't last for too long. So I think it limits that, but I don't know, I think sometimes in Bitcoin there's this idea that, you know, Bitcoin, because it changes these incentives, will bring about this sort of utopia where we all sit around with guitars playing Kumbaya and having a great time, right? I think changing the incentives will push us into a nicer, arguably more peaceful world, but it's not some magic wand that's going to make human beings all act appropriately. I just don't see that. I mean, the guy who stole my Bitcoin is presumably a Bitcoiner, right? But he still wants to steal. And I think, you know, human beings, right? We're not detached from nature, right? Just as everything in nature competes over resources, just because it's Bitcoin doesn't mean we're not going to compete over it. If one nation thinks that they have a viable way to take power and control from another nation through kinetic force, I think there'll still be an incentive to do it. The incentive will be smaller, the chances of success will be smaller, so maybe we'll see fewer wars, but I don't know, throughout human history, people have tried to take things from other humans, either through force or theft or tricking them or whatever, and I don't think that'll continue. I think it'll be less lucrative, less likely, but I don't think it'll disappear at all. Put it this way, there'll be still people trying to steal your Bitcoin, so don't do what I did and sit back and listen to some macro podcasts, and no, don't do that, keep trading.
It's going to put a lot more responsibility on yourself to protect yourself as well.
Oh yeah.
Because the state, as much as they're supposed to protect you, obviously there's things that...
Yeah, but it is something that we have chosen, right? We have chosen to become self-sovereign, and it's also your responsibility, right? Oh no, I forgot what I was going to say. You were just talking about...
Well, I was just saying, you know, there's always going to be people trying to take your things through illegitimate means.
Yeah. And you were also talking about economic value shifting, and yeah, I believe that it won't be as much like in the land or anything, but on knowledge or consciousness, right? I mean, for example, we could see a world where the person that makes the most money is the person that is investing in more computing power of the AI. Like whoever has a bigger data center to crunch information in an AI will get the most money, right? So yeah, perhaps we lose that thing about war being physical, and the war will be trying to get your Bitcoin, right? Trying to attack your Bitcoin.
One thing as well, Helen, you mentioned about like, is it a problem that, you know, in the West we're all obsessed with number go up while other countries are getting busy and you know, adopting Bitcoin in a more serious way? Honestly, I don't really care, because I think on a long enough timeline, all Bitcoin's going to do is introduce some new form of meritocracy, where if you provide value to the world, then you will attract Bitcoin, it will flow in your direction. So all right, you weren't cognizant enough to buy it with this paper that we have, which is an amazing opportunity that won't last forever. But these people are not now like bereft and cut out of society. If they can provide value, like, you know, we talked about there won't be any joiners in 20 years. So if you learn how to fix a door, in 20 years time you might be able to charge quite a lot of Bitcoin to fix someone's door because no one else will know how to do it. So I'm kind of excited about a meritocracy where instead of having all these useless people doing useless jobs because the government have subsidized some other insane idea that they've had, yeah, we'll have a meritocracy with people who, well, look, you know, some of the most useful people in society currently earn some of the lowest wages.
Yeah.
It's bonkers, but they provide the most value. So I'm excited to see what happens when there is a meritocracy. And then the people who are not providing any value, they're going to find life tough. But a couple of generations go past and, you know, people will get it. Work hard, get a reward. That incentive's gone now. That's why none of the kids at the school work hard or study hard, because there's no payoff. Once there is a payoff, they'll think, oh, I want to be a joiner, I want to be really good. Why? Because I want to earn Bitcoin and I want to make my progress in the world. So yeah, if people want to adopt it late, screw them, like fine, you know, they'll work it out.
Yeah, I think talking about meritocracy is like, I think one of the main issue of the, let's call it state model, fiat model, is like, its architecture, because it's a centralized structure, architecture that basically enhance or creates an incentive mechanism rewarding the parasitic behavior, you know, like with Bitcoin it's the other way around, because there is no centralization. It brings back decentralization that is no, we are seeing that it's like a cutting edge technology, but decentralization is the natural way of being, you know, like it's peer-to-peer models, it's the architecture, but in that way it can change and switch the society in the future, or like it's doing it for us, yeah.
So I wonder how, you know, coming back to geography and geopolitics, obviously we've got countries like, let's say, Nigeria, where, you know, you have the government imposing in naira, and you have generally, you know, a weak currency, you know, national currency, and quite savvy population that, you know, embraces crypto and Bitcoin, and you know, these guys are getting into it out of necessity, and they're using it out of necessity, whereas, you know, we are the privileged ones, so we kind of take, you know, our savings, the money we don't really need, and we put it in Bitcoin, and we're living our kumbaya life a little bit. Whereas, and you know, if you go out to the streets and you ask any normies passing by, they're gonna say, you know, I'm not really interested. This is not my thing, because there is no pain. Whereas for these guys over there, it's an actual matter of, you know, what I'm going to eat or how I'm going to get my food if I don't have sound money. So they understand that, and they embrace it much better than people in countries like UK or, you know, the Western world. So I'm wondering if, you know, because we cannot underestimate how genius Satoshi was in designing this beautiful thing, or, you know, the consequences of his discovery, if you like. You know, it works long term. It works, you know, it's supposed to be mining Bitcoin until the year 2140. So well beyond all of us are gone. And this thing will keep on ticking. You know, the heartbeat will keep on going. Every 10 minutes, TikTok, next block. And I'm thinking that maybe in the sort of, you know, geopolitical context, countries that are from, you know, developing countries, developing world, maybe they will, through pain, embrace this, you know, technology faster, you know, as a general public than us here, and they will leapfrog as well. They will, you know, the same thing will happen with phones, right?
With phones in Africa, yeah.
Exactly. They never had stationary phones.
They were directed to mobile phones, yeah.
So the same thing will happen with, you know, like banking. Okay, you know, there's some dodgy banks in Africa. Maybe there's no need for banks at all. Maybe everybody with, you know, $50 device can actually, you know, be their own bank. And I'm thinking that, you know, those developing countries, again, in 25 years' time, they might, you know, they might have, you know, small stack of, you know, a few 100,000 sats or, you know, thousands of sats, but spread across a bigger population, it may make a, you know, a bigger impact than a bunch of freaks like ourselves calculating stacks in UK, you know?
We are approaching the end of the day. Rick's clearly going to say something next. But first of all, I want to say we do actually have a sponsor. And we would like to thank that sponsor. Thanks to Ariel's suggestion on Geyser Fund, we have an author. Damn, I wish I could play this area. From Scotland, currently living in Germany. He's called Anthony Jeffries, and he is the author of Decrypting Money. And he very kindly gave us some help towards this conference. So could we have, please, a round of applause for Anthony Jeffries?
Every person here gets a copy of his book for free as a gift. So yeah, we're gonna hand them out.
I'd like to finish up, please. We've got, in the last 5 minutes, 1 minute each of the panelists. What do we do right now? What tips, what advice do you have right now, this week, this year? What do we do?
Well, I think this take baby steps, take actions, connect with your peers, don't feel afraid to ask anything. If you don't find your solution, whatever, just ask. A message, a search on YouTube video or whatever, or connect with us in social media, or take actions, because sometimes we fear things. The only way to battle and beat fear is with taking actions. If we stay and remain static, that is not going to help. From my experience, I know that Bitcoin might be a complex sense to understand, but when you get into that and you start learning and doing Bitcoin, it's not that complex as you thought it was. So take action, baby steps. Yeah.
Rick.
Yeah. Okay. I've had some really interesting thoughts. The last sort of 8 months, like, completely changed my view of all sorts of things. I mean, yeah. The main thing I would say is, like, don't make some of the mistakes I made, right? Which is, don't just sit at home and be passive. I think it's what you're talking about as well. Be active, right? Listening to podcasts is passive, right? Watching Michael Saylor, again, bang on. I mean, we've heard it 1,000 times. The weird thing about me is I've heard it 1,000 times for 10 years and I was still doing it. And I'm sure a lot of you are doing it as well. It's really nice, isn't it, to hear a famous guy with loads of money talk about how we're all going to get filthy rich, right? Love it, right? But it's a trap. You'll get stuck there. You'll listen to these endless macro podcasts about what is the Federal Reserve doing, what is Jerome Powell doing, what are rates doing. You find idiots on Twitter like, who's that? There's like a British hodl guy who's created a huge account now because he talks about ETFs and inflows and outflows and, God, people, right? Don't make that mistake. Don't fall in that trap. None of these idiots know what the price is going to be next week, right? But they're all going to be busy distracting you, making predictions. I mean, where's this Omega candle? I think these guys were telling us that we were going to be 100K in a couple of weeks. Trust me, 10 years I've been watching people come and go, and these people will go as well. They'll make their price predictions and they'll disappear. I fell into that trap of being too passive. You know, I thought I'd made it, man. You know, I had a nice stack of Bitcoin, I was doing all right, and now I was just, you know, filleting myself, listening to these podcasts, you know, thinking what a genius I am, and wow, what an idiot I was, right? What I should have been doing is putting in the work, taking action. I should have been, if I'd have been interacting with other Bitcoiners more, if I'd have been sending more transactions, if I'd have been, every time a new BIP comes out, go and read about it, what does it do? Like, that's where you should be investing your time, right? It's not enough to just buy and hold. This meme has got to die. If you just buy and hold, I'm telling you, it's a matter of time until you get your ass handed to you. So look, you know, don't stop learning, and things are going to evolve. We bought Bitcoin and then we kind of stopped, right? All this new technology came out, all this new way to secure your Bitcoin came out, and we just didn't we didn't stay active enough, we became complacent, we thought we'd already made it. If you're thinking that, that should be a good sign to maybe give your head a wobble and say, right, what don't I know? I mean, the guy who just left, I forget, well, he didn't tell me his real name, because he's smart, right? There was a talk today, for anyone watching this on video, that wasn't recorded, because this guy's smart, right? It's too late for me, I'm 100% doxed. But protect your privacy, train, like, make mistakes, just get involved, otherwise it might come back to haunt you.
All right. So, well, my advice is really short. I mean, it's about orange peeling the people you love. I know it sounds corny, or the people you think the highest morals, because we are so early that it's like you can choose who can succeed or who can get better, right? So, and also get them non-KYC Bitcoin, right? And also, if you like, you can support Bitcoineta, of course, and Bitcoin Walk. We really need the help to do the tour, right, and the conference. And well, thank you. I want to thank, because these are the last moments, to Jacob for organizing, and Helen organizing, and Louis as well, right? All the speakers.
Thank you.
So yeah, a big thank you to all.
Just quickly, Jacob is going to finish off because he's got a very compelling invitation. But I did want to remind you, thank you so much for coming. I mean, this was thrown together at the last minute, and I think this has been one of the most contentful, authentic, and enjoyable Bitcoin events that I have ever been to. I wasn't expecting it to be this. This has just been absolute, well, I'd say gold, but I suppose I should say Bitcoin. Could I remind you all, before you leave, if you've had any lunch or any drinks, could you pay for it downstairs at the bar? And I'll pass you over to Jacob now to say goodbye.
Goodbye. No, just to wrap it up, actions, right? So we need actions. We have to keep on moving. So stay humble, stack sats, every Saturday, go for a walk. Meet your crowds, know your community, exchange value for value, spend and replace. That's what I tend to do. I don't always do it, feel guilty because of that. I should do it more. I should basically encourage, and appreciate the beautiful things that people produce with their, in their time, and give them credit, give them some Bitcoin, and that's my recommendation. Yeah, and flex that Bitcoin muscle. Thank you. Oh yeah, and come to the walk, of course. Every Saturday. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock, we meet in Meadows, so it's 2 hours earlier than usually, but we'll have Fernando and Ariel with us. So yeah, come join us.